Have you ever started making a point in a meeting only for someone to interrupt you, take over the conversation, and somehow receive credit for the very idea that you were trying to explain? Or maybe you finally get an opportunity to speak, but before you can fully develop your thought, the conversation has already moved on. You leave the meeting frustrated, replaying the moment in your head. You know how we do. And wondering, why do people keep talking over me? Is it because I'm too quiet? Am I not confident enough? Do they simply not respect me? And sometimes people talk over you because they are rude, impatient, or accustomed to dominating conversations. But sometimes, without realizing it, the way you enter the conversation, the structure of your ideas, and maybe teaching people that your voice can be postponed. Today, I'm going to give you practical tools to help you command attention, communicate your ideas clearly, and hold your place in the conversation. But we are also going deeper because speaking up is not only about finding better words, it's about trusting that what you have to say deserves the space. Hi, I'm Kim Welcome, and for almost 20 years, I've worked at the intersection of communication, identity, and leadership, advising, coaching, and consulting professionals across corporate, nonprofit, and government. This channel is for the ones who get it done, the ones who are holding it down, the ones everyone relies on, the ones who are ready to close the gap between how much they give and how little they are recognized or even respected. We give you real tools and frameworks here, but we also do the deeper work because frameworks alone do not move you if your identity has not caught up. Subscribe. Stay with me. Before we get into what to do, we need to understand what may be happening. People do not always decide consciously that your ideas are unimportant. They often respond to the signals being communicated in the room. When you begin speaking tentatively, take too long to reach your point, lower your voice when someone interrupts, or immediately surrender the floor, you may unintentionally signal uncertainty. That does not mean the interruption is your fault. Let me be clear on that. Someone else is still responsible for how they behave, but you are responsible for learning how to protect your contribution. And the first place to start is with how you enter the conversation. Many people lose the room because before they ever reach their actual point, they begin with, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but, or this may have already been mentioned, or I was just thinking, or maybe we could possibly consider. And by the time you reach the idea, you already framed it as if it's optional. You need what I call an attention getting runway. A runway is a strong opening sentence that tells people why they should listen to you before you give them the supporting details. For example, the most important issue we need to address is, or there are two risks we may be overlooking, or the data is pointing to a different conclusion. Or before we can make that decision, there is one factor that we need to consider. Or my recommendation is that these openings help you claim the floor because they create curiosity and direction. You're telling the room what I'm about to say matters. And notice that none of these statements are aggressive. You do not need to become the loudest person in the room. You need to become clearer about the value that you're adding. One of the easiest ways to get interrupted is to make people work hard to understand where you're going. You may have important context. You may have done extensive research. You may understand the issue better than anyone else in the room. But if you give all that background before you get to your point, someone may jump in before you arrive at your destination. Instead, lead with the point, then support it. You can use this simple structure. Here is the issue. Here is why it matters. Here is what I recommend. For example, the project is likely to miss the deadline. Two critical approvals are still outstanding. I recommend that we assign one person to secure both approvals by Thursday. That is easier to follow than giving the entire story of the project before revealing the concern. Clarity makes it harder for people to dismiss or redirect what you're saying because they immediately understand the value of your contribution. When you know you may be challenged or interrupted, use evidence early. You could say, customer complaints increased by 18% last quarter. Or 3 of the 5 department heads have raised the same concerns. Or we have missed the target for 4 consecutive months. Or based on the latest employee survey, this is now one of the top 3 concerns. Data gives your point weight. It moves your contribution away from sounding like a personal preference and positions it as something the room needs to consider. But be careful. Do not bury people in information. Use the most relevant piece of data to establish the significance of the issue. Then explain what you believe should happen next. Data should strengthen your voice, not replace it. What do you do when someone interrupts you? Many women immediately stop speaking. They assume the interruption means the other person's point is more urgent or more important. You do not have to become confrontational, but you also do not have to disappear. You can say, let me finish this point, and then I'd like to hear your perspective. Or I want to complete this thought because it connects directly to the decision. Or hold on 1 minute, you want to hear this? Let me finish my point. These phrases allow you to hold the floor professionally. Your tone matters. You do not need to sound apologetic. You do not need to sound angry. So say it as though continuing your point is completely reasonable because it is. Sometimes you're interrupted and the conversation moves forward before you can complete your thought. Or someone repeats your idea later and receives the recognition. Do not sit there silently, becoming increasingly resentful. Re-enter the conversation. You might say, I would like to return to the point I was making earlier because it connects directly to this. Grab it back. Or that builds on the recommendation I introduced a few minutes ago. Or, yes, that was the direction I was proposing. Let me add the implementation piece. Or, I agree. And the reason I raised that earlier is because you are not accusing anyone of stealing your idea. You are simply reconnecting your name and your voice to the contribution. Now, let us talk about the deeper issues. You can learn every communication strategy I've shared and still struggle. Why? Because there may be a part of you that still believes speaking firmly makes you difficult. You may believe holding the floor makes you rude. You may believe that you need to be completely certain before you contribute. You may believe that the most senior, forceful, or experienced person in the room automatically deserves more space than you do. That is where identity comes in. When someone interrupts you, the interruption may activate an old belief. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe my point is not strong enough. Maybe I should let them speak. Or maybe I need more proof. And once that belief is activated, you are no longer simply managing an interruption. You are negotiating with your own sense of authority. You must begin seeing yourself as someone whose contribution belongs in the room. Not because you know everything, but because you were invited into that meeting for a reason. Your experience matters, your perspective matters, your ability to see what others may not see matters. The goal is not to convince yourself that you are always right. The goal is to trust yourself enough to participate before you have complete certainty. Before your next meeting, write down 3 things: the most important point you need to make, the data or evidence that supports it, the first sentence you will use to enter the conversation. For example, my recommendation is that we delay the launch by 1 week. Testing identified 3 unresolved issues. Before we confirm the launch date, there are 3 risks we need to address. Now, you are not waiting for confidence to arrive during the meeting. You have created a clear path into the conversation. And if you are interrupted, decide in advance what you will say. Let me complete my point. That sentence may feel uncomfortable the first few times you use it. Use it anyway. Confidence often comes after you hear yourself doing the thing you once believed you could not do. Being talked over does not automatically mean you lack value, but consistently allowing yourself to be talked over can affect how others perceive your authority. Your work may be strong, your ideas may be valuable, your preparation may be excellent, but people cannot recognize the full weight of your contribution if you repeatedly give up the space required to communicate it. Use an attention getting runway. Lead with the point. Support with relevant data. Hold the floor when you are interrupted and trust that your voice does not need permission to add value. If you recognized yourself somewhere in this video, especially if there's a particular person or particular room where you consistently surrender the floor, I want you to take a few minutes to complete my Close the Gap assessment. It's a short, honest look at the gap between how much you contribute and how you are actually being seen, heard, and recognized. It will help you identify whether your greatest gap is in how you communicate, how you see yourself, or how you respond when your authority is challenged. This assessment is free and the link is in the description below. I'm Kim Welcome. Communication is the skill. Identity is the power. I'll see you next week.